the, like you hate broccoli and, you know, storm out.
I think part of the problem with hi-fi, in my experience, has been that a lot of people spend a lot of time listening to the gear and not the music. And I think they've kind of, I don't want to say everybody's lost their way or they've lost the path, but that's not why I got into the hobby. I got into the hobby because the gear allowed me to hear the music in ways that I never thought possible, you know, and it was revelatory to me to hear my favorite artists that were so impactful to me throughout my life, in such a religious way almost, with its impact. And that's what kind of keeps me in it, is that connection. I mean, I've heard a lot of funny stories over the years about people listening to gear, and I just hope that if that's the case, that they can somehow find their way back to listening to the music.
Yeah, I talk to, you know, in my role at LTA, you know, I'm on the front lines. You know, when someone calls LTA, I'm the one that answers the phone. And so, you know, I talk to a lot of people on a daily and weekly basis. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we're getting into a lot of these sorts of discussions, frankly. It's not just, you know, they're not just asking me questions about, you know, impedance and, you know, watts per channel and all that kind of stuff. You know, of course, we are talking about that. But, and my experience overall has been people are much more music focused, right? They're coming at this from that perspective, you know, from a, you know, it's at least 80-20, right? You know, probably even more than that. And, you know, I think it's frankly, I point again, a little bit, I point the finger at the media, you know, in this case, in some places where their focus is so much on the gear that I think some people think that A, that's what all audiophiles care about, and B, it might steer newer people, you know, either away from the hobby or towards that part of the hobby because they think, oh, that's how you are, that's what audiophiles do, right? And I think it's, I don't know why, maybe it's just easier to review gear like that than to talk about the, you know, musicality or, you know, the experience of it. But it's something I welcome. That's why I was really excited when I saw you were back and you were, you know, reintroducing, you know, this sort of thing into the hi-fi culture. And so I'm excited for that. That said, let's move into some hi-fi stuff because, you know, we are, you know, I work for a manufacturer and you're sitting in front of some cool gear there. And frankly, you are going to review some gear from your own unique, you know, vantage point. So while you're switching your record, you can tell us what you're going to put on next if you've chosen. But tell us a little bit about what you're listening to this music on.
Well, right now I'm just sort of like in the middle of putting together my personal system. I guess it's like, it's a reference system in the sense of like, I know what it sounds like, so I can reference new gear as it's coming through. So right now I'm running pretty much all audio note system. So it's a set triode tube amp, single-ended. I'm going to put some Brian Eno on right now.
Cool. Yeah. Seems appropriate. That's how we started this conversation.
Yeah, and vinyl, and I'm going to be putting together. I've got Total DAC is very kindly continuing on with me as far as allowing me to use their gear as a reference for a DAC. And I've also got a DCS as well as very kindly letting me continue on some of their stuff, as is RRender. So the digital side is fairly high end.
Well taken care of there, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Lynn has kindly offered forth an LP12 for the time being.
Beautiful.
Moving ahead, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the system's going to look like, but I'm not in a rush. So I wish I could say to you, this is exactly what the system is going to be, but it's a work in progress.
And it's all gear that you've had for a long time already.
Back and forth. I haven't had this particular amp before.
Okay.
I've had this same model of speaker previously, which is why I came back to it.
And they are?
Those are Audionote ANESPEHE for high efficiency. So they're 97.5 dB efficient two-way loudspeakers, and they like to be corner loaded, much like some of the big Klipsch horns like to be corner loaded.
Perfect for your little small room there.
Perfect for a smaller room or even a bigger room if you've got corners, and you can make corners fairly easy even if you've just got a long wall or something. I used to get bookshelves, put them up against the wall, and then just shove the speakers in the corner between the bookshelf and the wall, and it worked fabulously. Yeah, and the turntable could be changing, the cartridges could be changing. I kind of like something that has the more classic kind of EMT or Audiophile style head shell on it, so that it makes it easier to swap cartridges out. You don't necessarily always have to have two tone arms then, although I mean I wouldn't be opposed to having a Gerard 301 and a big plinth that I could jam 3 tone arms on. I'd be okay with that.
Sure.
But I think from a practical standpoint, and also I think a little bit from the audience standpoint of who I'm trying to connect with, I think something along the lines maybe of a Techniques might be more in line, just because that's a turntable that I kind of feel has kind of been maligned in the audiophile world as being for DJs, and it was only adopted by DJs because it was so indestructible.
Right.
I personally like the big ballsy sound from a 1200,
yeah.
Especially when paired with like a more astute cartridge, let's say like maybe something by Koetsu. A lot of people would be like, well, why would you put a Koetsu on a Techniques turntable? It's like, well, have you heard it?
Right.
So experimentation comes into it. I'm looking for a sound system that mostly and most importantly is emotionally engaging and connects me to the music. So, and I mean, and that's half the fun with gear, is putting combinations together and curating something that is going to be pleasing to you. I remember reading the other day, somebody, one of the forums somewhere was talking about what they had done, and someone said, why would you ever do that? That's not the way that you would do that. And he's like, and the person who had posted originally was like, you don't know what I like.
Right. That's the way I did it, so that's the way it's going to be.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't think you need to tell people how to do stuff necessarily. You can show them how you're doing it, and you can relate that this is the type of sound or these are the type of qualities you're getting from doing this, and that is what you enjoy. But I think it's a mistake to try to jam anything down somebody's throat all the time and say this way or no way. But it's a funny tribal hobby. I don't think I've ever been involved in anything that's can make people so angry on the internet as hi-fi.
Totally. Well, and there's something about music in general. There's an analogy that I use, that is, we get super emotional about music for some reason. And, so if I said to someone, and hi-fi, by extension, I think it's connected in our brains. But if I say, I hate or love a band that you hate or love on the opposite side, right? Like that stirs emotion in us, right? But if I say I hate broccoli, which I do, and you absolutely love broccoli, I don't know if you do or not, doesn't matter. But no one's gonna just write you off and be like, "What the? Like you hate broccoli?" and storm out and start an argument. But that happens all the time with bands and gear and things like that. So it's because it's an emotional medium, right? It's literally vibration. It's going into us, but
I think people take it a little too seriously, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think it's frankly, I've been involved in a few different hobbies and, a bunch of different online communities over the decades now. And it's not limited to hi-fi, right? I think anyone that gets into anything, whether you're into, bicycling or, cars or, fashion or running or anything, and I've been involved in certain elements of those, people get really worked up and they tend to think that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And, you know, in general, my philosophy in the world is if everyone stopped telling other people what to do, the world would be a better place.
I'd have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah. So that said, you know, you said you're looking for, you know, an emotional connection to the music. Are you? I thought it was interesting that, you know, you, from as a reviewer, you do have to take into account when you're choosing components, your role as a reviewer, right? You know, easy to swap in and out. You know, easy to, you know. So, how do you marry those two things as far as, you know, what you're personally looking for in a component, and, you know, what you need to be doing from a, you know, what your sort of, I don't know, responsibility, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, to your readership?
I usually try to just track down stuff that I like personally or be interested in, or that I think more people should know about, just because I find it so interesting. I'm sort of like, wow, this is blowing me away, or I can't believe they're doing this. Like, more people should know about it. So I kind of tend a lot more towards that type of gear reviewing. I look for stuff, again, going back to that's creating an emotional connection, and I try to write about that as best I can. I'm not huge on specifications or measurements at all, other than the basic ones for system matching. Like, you know, I wouldn't pair a pair of 80 dB speakers with a 2A3 triode amp that's putting out 3 watts or something, right? I mean, I think certain measurements are there to help as a guideline in setting stuff up. But I mean, if you talk to anybody in the business about measurements, you can have two, let's say, boxes that measure exactly the same, and they will sound different.
Right.
So
yeah, it's good for system setup and synergy. Yeah, but not necessarily good for comparison.
Yeah. So yeah, and as far as just, it's mostly with Resistor Mag, it's just going to be about just bringing cool stuff to light and talking about it in a fun and refreshing way, and not to get hung up on too much of the density, I guess, that might accompany a lot of traditional reviews. For myself, I mean, I don't like to really talk about cost, because the cost is what the cost is. I'm not here to say it's too much, or you could charge way more. I mean, it's whatever the manufacturers have decided they're able to produce something at and make a living, because you have to do that. So I don't really get into that. And as far as gear types, I mean, I like all gear types. I like solid state, I like tube, I like digital, I like analog. Different types of speakers, high efficiency, low efficiency, you know, simple, you know, crossover, complex crossover. You know, it really just depends. There's probably as many ways to get the sound that I love as there are types of speakers and amps and sources to do that. That's one thing that I've learned too. If you hear enough stuff, you can figure out what works with what, and it's going to give you a sound that you like. This is a hobby, much like life, that is about trade-offs. You're never going to get everything that you want in one system, but you're going to hopefully get enough of what you really love that's going to make you want to play everything you've got again and again, or to just, like you said, just keep searching for more and more music to add to your collection to listen to, because it sounds so good and you enjoy it. So that's the big hope as far as the gear side of Resistor Mag goes. It's going to be about enjoying gear and talking about it in a relatable way as far as review goes. I think a lot of people that are younger have difficulty sort of metabolizing a lot of the information in a traditional review that you might see. So the goal here is going to be to make it a lot easier to digest, without sacrificing anything of intelligence or clarity about what's happening with the product.
What's your process like, as far as, you know, the act of reviewing the gear, right? You know, do you have a set process that you go through in evaluation, or is it just, you know, you listen to a bunch of music over time and, you know, the words come?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's I usually hook up a system or component. Depends what the context is too. Like sometimes I got some reviews coming up that are two components at once from the same manufacturer, because to me it was a holistic setup. It just made the most sense to do it this way because they're kind of built for each other and voiced for each other. And I think that's stuff that people who are looking to get into gear are hopeful to find when they're doing searching for reviews, is what works well with each other. But yeah, for the most part, I bring a new piece of gear in, I set it up, I just start listening to it, and usually takes a couple of weeks for things to get bedded in. For the most part, if it's a new piece, obviously less if it's a review sample that's been around a little bit. And then yeah, I'll take notes, probably spread over a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months. Just depends how busy I am and what the component is in particular. So the biggest thing is just going through and making the listening notes, and then from there I usually just sit down and figure out a way to make that palatable.